We could have done them all. We could have.
There are over 30.
Challenge accepted. Welcome to Adaptable,
The show where we talk about movies and the books they're based on.
I'm Emily,
I'm Paige.
and today we'll be talking about Pride and Prejudice. For this episode, we'll be breaking from our usual debate format in favor of a ranking of 5 different adaptations of Pride and Prejudice.
Because of this, we won't be going through the plot of Pride and Prejudice point by point, though there will still be spoilers. Instead, we're going to talk about the things an adaptation needs in order to be a true Pride and Prejudice adaptation, rather than just your run-of-the-mill enemies to lovers romance.
Though the first thing you do need is enemies to lovers. In any true story of Pride and Prejudice, the boy and girl have to dislike each other at the start of the story.
Next, you need a set of secondary characters to juxtapose on top of these enemies to lovers. These characters fall in love right away, seem perfect for each other, and at least at the beginning, don't seem to have any problems.
Next, you need for there to be an imbalance of power between your two love interests, in the guy's favor. This usually takes the form of class in the traditional Pride and Prejudice novel, where he's perceived as having more social credit than she is, but in adaptations it can vary depending on the setting.
The final 2 things are more thematic. The first deals with families' pressures and influences in our relationships, how a family can impact an adult's choices.
And finally, you need to address society's pressures around marriage, and those pressures can take a variety of forms. Maybe it's marrying within a certain ethnic group, marrying for a certain financial gain, or just your heroine's turning 30 and feeling her age because she isn't married. It's just all the different things that can pile onto a person as they decide who they love and who they want to marry. Number 5 in our ranking is the 2016 Hallmark movie Unleashing Mr. Darcy, based on the 2012 novel by Terry Wilson, though really it's just an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. They do not even stick very closely to the source book. They're mostly interested in Pride and Prejudice plus dogs.
Yeah, the plus dog part's a little weird. One good thing about it is they did keep the influence of women. All of the female characters are strong, all of the main protagonists and antagonists are still female.
One of the most empowering parts of the novel of Pride and Prejudice is that women get to influence the plot they are a part of, and they maintain that. They, however, stumble a little bit more when it comes to the male characters. Alright, so this is going to sound a little paradoxical, but if you want the character of Lizzie Bennet to work, you need to make Mr. Darcy a bit of a jerk at the beginning of the story. If he's not a jerk, Lizzie's self-righteous kind of indignation just comes off as irritating and obnoxious. And in this movie adaptation, Darcy's pretty nice. I mean, he's a dog show judge, so he judges her dog, but that's literally his job. She signed up for the show.
He comes across as a little bit of a stiff introvert.
Yeah, but he's nice enough, so there's no place for him to grow to, so they've hacked out his character arc, and they still keep all of Lizzie's anger towards him, so she just comes off kind of crazy and mean.
A little bitchy.
Yeah.
And finally, a lot of adaptations attempt to use Jane Austen's original works or quotes. This one uses them with Darcy talking to the dogs. It's weird. It doesn't work.
When he lists the qualities of a desirable woman, they recontextualize it so he's describing Lizzie's dog.
Hair, dogs, fine eyes. Ugh.
Yep.
Number 4 is Pride and Prejudice, a Latter-day comedy written in 2003. And yes, this is about Mormons and it is set in Utah. My favorite part of this is actually Wickham. He is a really believable character in that he's actually likable at the beginning. They give him enough screen time to really develop the fact that he and Lizzie have a friendship that could go into dating, but could also just be this guy and girl hanging out. And as a side note, Collins ends up with Mary, and that's so perfect.
We have been waiting over 2 centuries for that to happen. Very satisfying, which is a shame they don't get one of the other major couples right. They massacre the characters of Jane and Bingley. They absolutely butcher their arcs. Bingley goes from being kind of goofy and a little naive, but well-meaning, to just an idiot.
It's bad.
He's not even comically dumb, because it's almost just unbelievably dumb. And then, because Jane has to fall in love with Bingley, her character is also made very, very dumb. So it's just a little awkward to see two people who have almost no understanding of what's going on try and fall in love with each other. And it just really guts what are supposed to be just two nice, normal people falling in love. Also, Jane is the only non-American character. She's from Argentina. And there's just something about making the hot woman also a dumb foreigner that just grates uncomfortably.
Yes.
It's also worth noting that this adaptation is probably the lowest production quality of any we're addressing. There are weird choices in editing. It's shot in a pretty low quality. The acting isn't horrible, but you can feel that they're not given very good direction. Like someone will say a joke, and then the camera will do like 3 different cuts to different people's responses, and it slows the pace down. There's just a lot of...
There's random blank screens that just pop up a single Jane Austen quote that doesn't really have anything to do with the plot at the moment. There's just some weird choices.
Yeah, the movie clocks in at about an hour and 40 minutes, and it almost feels like they had to make some weird editing choices just to try and pad it out a little bit. And it just makes the pacing very strange. Number 3, and the most recent adaptation, is the 2020 musical Pride and Prejudice, a new musical.
This could have been so good. Pride and Prejudice, musical theater, what's there not to like? Instead, the music doesn't really add a whole lot. It's basically characters coming forward one at a time and individually singing their thoughts with music from different eras and genres that don't always blend or work together particularly well with the characters or with the musical as a whole. The one positive is we do get Catherine de Bourgh with an awesome diva song. It's the best one in the show. But other than that, we see Darcy sing right away in Act 1, which is just jarring. They should have saved that for the end. And just the actual choices in the style of music aren't great. We don't get a single company number. We don't get anything that is what we look for when we look for something that's musical theater.
Darcy's singing is just so fundamentally contrary to who his character is at the opening of the novel.
At the beginning. At the end, him singing his love will be part of the arc and could have worked so well.
So beautiful.
But the choices the production made and how they integrated the music just made it kind of okay.
Yeah, the music doesn't add anything. There's no reason this couldn't have just been a play, cut down the runtime and not have everyone sing everything they're just going to say anyway. Also, the musical suffers from one serious plot problem, mostly in the characterization of Lizzie Bennet. Alright, so Lizzie Bennet can be a difficult character to get correct. The legacy of the character of Lizzie Bennet, who she is in pop culture, is a headstrong, fiercely independent woman who don't need no man. But that is not really Lizzie's role in the novel. Like, she is clever, and she's certainly more independent, but she's not totally disconnected from the society she lives in. She does hope to marry, and that's a really valuable grounding piece of her character. Now, whether or not Lizzie gets married or not isn't what makes her relatable, but that she has the same general goals as the people around her is important.
She's someone you could actually meet. She's not a stereotype.
Yes. A lot of modern adaptations feel the need to make Lizzie Bennet this symbol of girl power, so she can't do anything wrong or say anything wrong. She needs to be smarter, funnier, clever, more progressive, more empowered than anyone else in the plot, and that's how you know she's the main character. And it just makes Lizzie obnoxious. No one tends to see themselves that way, so it makes her really hard to connect with.
So, in case it seems like we don't like any adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, our number 2 is Bride and Prejudice, a 2004 Bollywood adaptation.
And it is so much fun. A marriage come into town. This adaptation fully embraces its premise. If you like anything Bollywood, if you like anything Pride and Prejudice, put it on.
It's golden.
It's so much fun. The music is over the top in the best sense. It is so colorful. Like, there's genuinely several songs I will play just on their own sometimes. So, like, it is so much fun.
It's great.
On a more serious note, it also does some nice cultural reworking of Pride and Prejudice. So, Pride and Prejudice, the novel itself, isn't particularly concerned with any issues of race because it's set in a very specific time period in a very specific locality. But the legacy of Pride and Prejudice, because of that, can occasionally get a bit racist. We tend to idealize a very British, very white culture, and there's also the legacy of British imperialists exporting this culture to other parts of the world, including India. The movie has several moments where it kind of claps back at that, where the Mr. Darcy character, the hot, rich, white, British guy, is not actually really the object of a lot of people's affection because they want to marry within their own culture. They don't want a white guy to swoop in and save them.
There's literally a moment in the movie where they go, oh, look at Mr. Darcy, he's so rich. Too bad he's white and not Indian.
It's kind of a nice way of pushing back on some of the over-romanticization of British culture at the expense sometimes of other cultures.
One thing to note, this movie does not break out of the Hollywood issues of colorism. All of the Indian characters we're supposed to find attractive are Indian, but they are paler or lighter skinned.
Yes. An unfortunate note in what otherwise is a really nice, lovely reworking of Pride and Prejudice in a more multicultural setting.
It's fluffy, it's fun, it makes you laugh.
It brings a marriage into town. And number 1, our favorite of these 5 adaptations, the 2012 Lizzie Bennet Diaries, a web series.
This series is fantastic. One thing it gets so right is the sisters' relationships. You get that these are very real sisters in their 20s trying to figure out how to live and be sisters together.
Yes, and the modernization of the plot is really nice. The character of Lizzie Bennet, who in the original novel is kind of the wayward youngest sister who tends to make poor decisions, ends up getting married to Wickham because otherwise she would be ruined, is now kind of a really fun-loving, 20-something, and when Lizzie kind of shames her for being just kind of a fun-loving, young woman, the plot pushes back on that, and ultimately Lydia gets to grow from her experience with Wickham and presumably move beyond it. The message of the web series is you can make mistakes and grow from them, not so much the cautionary tale that was more relevant in Austen's time, where if you did ruin yourself with a gentleman, you didn't get a future. Lydia can in modern times, so the adaptation bends to accommodate that.
Again, one note, the pacing on this can get a little slow. Jane Austen's original novel was paced over a year, but in a novel you can skip over the slow parts in life and you can jump months. This web vlog came out with 2 episodes a week for a year, and there just isn't that much content to fill all of that time.
Yep, moments that weren't really existent in Pride and Prejudice because it happened during the fade to black sort of moments in the novel suddenly get just as much screen time as the actual plot points.
Still, this web series is worth watching.
Definitely, you can find it for free on YouTube and we highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Over the course of these 3 episodes, we have covered 7, but by no means all of the adaptations of Pride and Prejudice. But I like to think we've hit some of the highlights.
Thank you so much for sticking with us, and as always, please comment below on any of these 5 or any others that you love or love to hate.
This has been Adaptable.